Hello, quilt artisans. My name is Shonda, and welcome to my channel Under the Needle. So, I want to talk a little bit today about the anatomy of a pieced back. So, I've got a quilt here that I finished my top, and it was time for the backing. And initially, I was going to do a pieced back, right? I was going to take the extra pieces I had left, and piece the back. And then I was like, I don't want to do that. I just want to get this quilt done. So if I have a piece of fleece I can throw on there, I can just baste that together and get this thing quilted like by tomorrow. But I didn't have a piece. Anything that I had that was big enough didn't match. And anything that matched wasn't big enough. So then I went to my quilting cotton, samesies. Just nothing was right. Because normally what I'll do is if I know, like if I find coordinating backing, I'll go ahead and buy it when I buy the fabric. So, or I'll be looking for it and when I see something that works. But for this particular fabric line, I liked it so much that I always intended to piece the back. But when the rubber hit the road and the time came, I just didn't want to put in that effort. But I had to because nothing else worked and I wasn't going to go to the store to buy fleece. So I did some calculations. So I'm going to kind of show you guys my process of how I piece it back. The first thing you have to figure out is what do you have left, right? So, and what do you need? What pieces do you have left and how much yardage do you need according to the pattern directions, and then what pieces do you have? Now my quilt is 60.5 by 70.5, and I'm going to quilt it myself on my domestic machine, so I don't need a lot of overhang necessarily, right? And I can use a throwaway fabric for my overhang. And what I mean by that is I can create a border to give myself something to hang on to that's going to end up getting cut off when I trim the quilt. But anywho, so my quilt is 60.5 by 70.5, unfinished. And I need my backing to be at least 65 by 75 so that I can quilt it myself. And so I wrote down everything that I had left of my fabric, like literally wrote down like these are the pieces that I have. Right? These are all the pieces of fabric. And then I calculated. I'm a very math person. So my process is not going to be like someone else's process. I'm sure some people just start sewing. And sometimes I do that too. Especially if I have a lot. I'll just start sewing stuff together and see. But I like this quilt a lot. And so I wanted to be a little bit more deliberate about the back. And so I was tallying up the yardage of the pieces that I have left. And I had probably exactly 4 yards. And according to the pattern, I need 4 yards. So clearly I wasn't going to have enough. So I brought in some other prints. So I started with, I had these strips that were 3.5 inches. Well, I think the smallest piece was like 3 7/8 wide. Or something like that. And so there were some that were a little bigger, but I think the smallest piece was like a little bit more than 3.5. So I was like, okay, I can trim all of these to 3.5. And so I had one for every skew in the line, for every fat quarter that I used. I had this strip. You can see the strips. Maybe I should go to the overhead camera. Maybe that'll be easier for me and easier for you. All right, so not this. This is a piece I had to add on. But each of these pieces here, this is a strip of the background that I added in for symmetry. Okay, and let me explain. So basically the way this was is that I had, I think, six solids and like 12 prints. And the way that I did this, it was like solid, print, solid, print, solid, print, like all the way down, solid print, solid print. But then I wanted to be able to end in a solid for symmetry. So I cut a piece of the background fabric and threw it in here. So then I had all of these kind of strips pieced together. But these strips pieced together wasn't wide enough for my quilt top. So then I took another piece of fabric that's already here. And I don't think I had a strip of this. So it kind of worked out. Here's the pink. But this particular fabric, I didn't have this. I didn't have a strip of this. So I took some and I put it on both sides to get it like kind of wide enough. This still isn't quite wide enough, but I at least need a baseline. Like if I get I needed a center, and I decided that this is going to be the center of my back, and I'm going to build around this. That's kind of what I like to do. I like to kind of have a center strip, either horizontal or vertically, a center. I like to have a center. And then I like to build out from that center, either build out horizontally or build out vertically. That's kind of what I like to do. So I'm building out from this. So I had some art gallery, because this is art gallery fabrics. This is Bookish by Sharon Holland. And I had some other art gallery fabrics, and they play really well together. So I picked some out, and I had some half yards in my stash. And so I then cut the half yards into fat eighths. Into fat quarters. I cut the half yards in half and made them into fat quarters. And then for symmetry, I had 3 different half yards. And what I did for one of them is, for one row, I decided to make 2 rows. And I took one row and I took 2 different fat quarters. Because now I have 6 fat quarters, right? I had 3 half yards. Now I have 6 fat quarters. So I took 3 of the fat quarters and I sewed them together. And again, for symmetry, I want balance. So I took 2 prints on opposite sides and a different print on the center. And I put that on one side. And basically I found the center. So I have this long strip, right, of these 3 fat quarters sewn together. I folded it in half, found the center. I folded this in half, this strip of strips, folded it in half, found the center, matched those centers, sewed these together, right? And now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I have 3 more fat quarters, again, because I had 3 total half yards. I cut it into 6 fat quarters, and I put the same one in the middle. So this one here, I put it in the middle of these 2 green ones. So I have dark, dark, light, and then here I have dark, dark, light. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to fold this in half, find the center, sew it to the center of this, and then I'll have my strip, or I'll be building out from my center. So I'm going to go back to my top camera. So this is what I have so far. So this definitely, and then my next strip is going to go on this side. Okay, and so once I get this strip on, my back will be about 75% of the size I need it to be, maybe 60%. I'll be almost there. As far as I think that I want the strip. I haven't decided yet if I want this to be vertical, like if I want this strip of strips to be vertical or if I want it to be horizontal. I have to decide that. So that's going to be a tomorrow project. So tomorrow I'm going to put this on to the other side of this. And then once I do that, I'll probably lay it out on the floor with the quilt, right? I'll probably take the quilt and lay the quilt right side down. And then I'll probably take this backing and put this backing right side up. Right side up. I'll take the quilt top and put it right side up And then I'll put the backing on top of it right side up and kind of center it on there and see what I like best. Right? So that's kind of my plan. So piecing a back is different every time, right? Because you never know how much fabric you're going to have left. My stuff was a bit uneven. Like I had a miscut. So for me, this, the pink strip here, I had to piece it because I didn't have a pink strip because I had a miscut and I had to like recut something. And so that left me a little short. So I had to piece this strip so that it would match. So there's that. But yeah, so I'm going to get this other piece on tomorrow because it's 10 p.m. and I'm hot and I'm tired and I haven't eaten and I'm ready to take a shower and get in my bed. But tomorrow morning, I'm going to get up because I'm pretty excited about this now because I want to get this done. I really would like to get my back done and have this basted and get some initial stitching done. Or at least I need to, and I also have to stay stitch the quilt. There's a lot of biased edges on my quilt and I'm concerned about that as I'm quilting it. So I'm going to do a stay stitch all around the edges of the quilt. So I might not get the quilting started tomorrow, but I at least want to get this back done tomorrow and maybe hopefully get it basted tomorrow because I really want to get the quilting started. So if I can get the back done, the stay stitching done, and then a stay stitch is when you just do 1/8 of an inch around the perimeter of your quilt just to keep it from stretching. That's all it is. And I normally don't do that. But as I'm handling my quilt, I can just feel it stretching. And I don't want that. So I'm definitely going to do my stay stitching in the morning. But I'll probably start this back first. I'll probably get on this back first and then do the stay stitching. And then see, and then once the stay, because I don't want to play with the quilt. Right? I don't want to play with the quilt until I've done the stay stitching. So I don't want to be doing all of that handling to test how I want the back until I've done the stay stitching. So I'll do this third little, add this, last strip, this strip here, then do my stay stitching, and then probably lay this out with the quilt top to see how exactly I want to make it bigger, right? What do I need? So I'm going to put this smack dab in the middle of my quilt top and then figure out how I want to build around it. So, and I'm going to even it out, right? Because this piece here, they're not the same length, right? This piece is a little bit longer. So I'll I'll definitely trim this off to make it even. And I'll do the same thing on the other side because there's a little overhang on the other side. So I'll cut this as well. And when I add this third strip, I'll even that off as well. And once it's all even, like I said, I'm going to lay the quilt top down, face up, right side up. And then I'll lay my backing down, right side up, smack dab in the middle. And then I'm going to look at the fabric that I have left and figure out how I want to add the rest of my fabric. I feel like that's a really good thing to do. So if you are piecing a back, that is a good thing to do. Once you have a nice sizable piece, you want to put it with your quilt and figure out how you want to center it, because then that can give you ideas on how to build around it. So the next piece I have here, and that's why I stopped myself, and that's why I started making this video, because I had this going here, right? I had two fat quarters that I did not use because they were going to be really too close to my background, and I did not want them to get, muddled and not have definition. These would not, for me, I would not have liked this with my background, because my background is, as I showed you before, my background is this color here. And so if I had put, Lord, like this with my, if I had put this with my background, I don't know, I guess it would have stood out, but for me, I don't know, just a little too light. I just wanted to use more of the color prints. And then there's this print here, which I did not want to use either. I wanted more definition. So, so I was starting to piece this, right? I was starting to piece this, and then it was like, no. Because I had these were fat quarters, so I just even them out. And that's one thing I do. I usually make everything the same size. I like symmetry a lot. I don't always. I'll take it back. I don't always make them the same size, but I always square up the fabric. Okay? I always make sure that the fabric is square. Not so much on the length, but the edges that I'm sewing, I like to make sure those are square. So if I know that I'm putting these strips together lengthwise, then I'm going to square up both edges. I don't really care so much about the short edges because I'm going to trim this all even once I'm done anyway. So I don't care about the short edges, I don't only care about the sewn edge. The edge that I'm sewing, I make sure that I square up both sides of that fabric so that as I'm putting it together, everything goes together nice and evenly and smoothly, and I don't have a lot of issues. So once I get this done, then I'll decide what I'm going to do here, because I was starting to sew another row, and I was like, no, don't do that. Look at what you've got first. Put it on the quilt, see what you've got, see how much you need on either side, see how much you still need on the top and bottom to have what you want. Because at the end of the day, I don't want any part of this to be cut off. This main, my center, which is these 3 strips, I don't want that cut off. I want that centered on my quilt, and then I want to build some type of border around it that I don't mind if it gets cut off. But I want this centerpiece to be part of my backing. I want it to be the center of my backing. So we're going to see how this all comes together tomorrow, and I will finish this video and let you know how it all worked out. Okay, so it is the next day, and I did accomplish my mission. I did get my back finished, and I did get my quilt basted. I might get a couple lines of stitching done today, but I'm not sure. But I want to show you guys how I finished my back, but I don't want you to see the front. So let's see here. So I'm just going to go all completely to this camera here. All right, so as you know from before, I had the center strip here, right? And then with that center strip, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't quite long enough. So I had added this main floral here that was not in my quilt top. And then I went and I had the half yards. I had, let's do that, that'll be better. I had the half yards. It was three half yards that I cut into 6 fat quarters. And so I took one of the half yards and put it in one row, using a fat quarter here, and then a fat quarter here, a contrasting fat quarter here, and then the same fat quarter on the opposite side. And then I attached that to my row here that has a strip of every print in the quilt. And then again, I did the same thing over here. And so I have my 3 fat quarters. This is like a burgundy purple. There, this is very true to color. Well, no, it's more burgundy, and sometimes on screen it looks burgundy and sometimes it looks purple. And then we have the contrasting one here. Probably won't do any stitching today because I want to iron this quilt back. And then we have our matching piece here. So I finished that piece, got both. I think last night I had one of these strips attached. So I got both strips attached, and then of course I still didn't have enough length. So I had sewn a piece of yardage that I had of this fabric here, and I sewed that to a fat quarter. and I sewed them together lengthwise and made them the same length. So they would have been 18. This would have been, I've sewed it on the 18-inch length. So yeah, so I sewed it on the 18-inch length. So I took an 18-inch by width of fabric piece of this, and then I took this fat quarter and sewed them together on the 18-inch side of the fat quarter. And then I ended up cutting that down the middle. So I ended up cutting it down the middle. So I have one piece here, and the other piece is on the other side, but I put the fat quarter in the opposite side of the quilt. So I had that, and then I cut that, and then I knew that wasn't going to be enough either, and I needed a little bit more fabric. So I had this piece of yardage here that I'm using for my binding, and I was going to have some left over. So I cut my binding strips, and I had some left over. So I cut, I think, 3 5-inch strips, I think is what I cut. And I cut, so 5 inches by width of fabric. And then I took one of the pieces and cut it in half. And then I joined one full width of fabric strip with one of the half strips. And that gave me a piece that was approximately 62 inches wide, or long, I should say. And then I attached that to this, this piece here. So this is like half of the piece, and the other side of the quilt is the other half of the piece. And then I have this piece here in the middle on both sides. And this does not stripe. It's just one kind of width of fabric. Same piece all the way down. And so I sewed that to this piece here. And so now we just kind of have this kind of cool symmetry. And I'm going to try to see if I can show you that. Oh, wrong camera. Let's see if I can show you that. Okay. So here's the top part. And you can see that half of that fat quarter right here, and then that length of fabric here, and then that single strip of the brown fabric. And then you can see those half yards that I cut. And here you can see the strip. And then it's kind of like exactly, it's kind of symmetrical. I don't know why I wanted it to be symmetrical, but I don't know. It was just important to me. So I like how this came out. It's probably the favorite backing that I've ever pieced. Excuse me, I have winter allergies and they're acting up. So that is my backing. And that is kind of how it came to be. That is the anatomy of a backing. So it just kind of came together. You know, it's like, okay, do I have enough scraps? Do I have enough? Like, that's step one. Look at what you have left over and try to calculate generally how much yardage you have of scraps, and look at how much yardage you need for your background. For your backing. And I would say, you know, you need 1.5 times is what I would say. Like, if you have, if yours is 4 yards, if you need 4 yards for your quilt, then you probably want to have 6 yards of scraps to piece it, because you got to remember the seams, right? You're piecing a lot of stuff together, and so you're going to be losing 3/8 of an inch or 1/2 of an inch, because I use a chunkier seam when I'm piecing the back. I use at least 3/8, and so the only time, I didn't use half, because if I used half, I would have had to like add more fabric. So using 3/8 of an inch for my seam allowance enabled me to use what I had to make it work. So see how many scraps you have. Do you even have enough? And then if you don't, how much can you put together? What can you piece? You might just be able to piece a single strip. and that's okay. And then get coordinating yardage or backing. Or like if you just have one piece of backing, when you cut your backing in half, you can just piece that strip in between those two pieces. Anyway, I'm super proud of this backing. So I think I'm gonna let it sit overnight and hit it with the iron in the morning and get it nice and pressed and flat, because I don't want a lot of puckers in this. So that is the anatomy of a backing. So I don't know why I was hiding the quilt top, because I've even though I have not done that video yet showing the quilt top, this video for the backing is going to come out after that video, so I'm not quite sure why I was trying to hide the front of the quilt. So I might as well show y'all that too. And this is the front of my Nightingale quilt. I made this with Bookish fabric. Bookish is the collection by Art Gallery Fabrics. I can't even show the whole quilt. It's so big. When I do the actual quilt reveal video, I'm going to have to take some steps to make sure that I position my camera properly so that I can show the entire quilt, because it came out great. I did use poly batting, which makes it a bit light because the recipient of this lives in a warmer climate, and so it just made sense to use poly batting. So like I said, step one, figure out how much yardage, approximate yardage you have in scraps. Figure out how much you actually realistically want a piece. I had a lot of little pieces that I didn't decide to use. And then I pulled coordinating yardage from other collections to put into my backing, because I did not want to deal with all these little pieces. I wanted to make my life a little bit easier, and I wanted the front is so elegant that I did not want the back to be like junky looking, like too scrappy, too mishmash. I didn't want that for the quilt, because I felt like that wouldn't match the elegance of the front of the quilt. So that was step two. How much do you realistically feel like piecing together? And do you want to piece? Do you want to do the entire back like I did, or just one stripe? How do you want to do it? And it's really up to you. And then you just kind of take it from there. I probably put more thought into this piece back than any other one I've done. And I've done quite a few. Not thought really, but time. I spent a lot of time piecing the back of this quilt. A lot. Definitely not as much as the front, but a lot of time piecing this back. So, yeah, I'm going to get it ironed and hopefully get the quilting started tomorrow. Well, tomorrow for me, but by the time y'all watch this, it will already be quilted and bound. So that's it for me, and that is the anatomy of a pieced backing. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next video.